Population management is a huge subject all unto itself. This is a global look at the dynamics of animals flowing through the shelter. So when we do an analysis of a shelter's population management, we'll look at intake, what kind of animals are coming in, what the sources are. We'll look at all of their dispositions, how long it takes to get to each disposition in terms of length of stay, and the health trends on those rare shelters where we can actually gather that information from the records. And this will tell us a lot about whether a shelter is working within its capacity, because we compare these trends to the number of housing units that the shelter has, and we can look for ways where there's gaps that we might be able to fix. For instance, if animals are having a really long stay in adoptions, we can work with the shelter to find a way to move animals through adoptions faster so we can have higher turnover. As part of population management, we'd like the veterinarian to be involved with identifying the best path for each animal. So does it need to go to foster care? Is it not thriving in the shelter and it needs a break? Does it need to go up for adoption immediately, or maybe it needs a behavioral consultation or behavior training to make it a better adoption candidate? And we help shelters understand what their capacity for care is currently, and sometimes it can identify ways for them to increase that capacity. But we do need to budget our animal intake and our resources to fit within the capacity of the shelter to avoid that concept that we are concerned about called warehousing. And warehousing isn't limited to shelters that are trying to be no-kill. We go into plenty of municipal shelters that are warehousing animals with absolutely no plan for getting them out in larger numbers alive. And I think you can see this. This is an example of how a shelter responded to an analysis of their statistics. This is City of Jacksonville Animal Care and Control. And this is their live release rate for cats. For 3 years, it averaged about 7%. So if you were a cat in Jacksonville, you didn't want to end up at the shelter. It's a large shelter there. When we visited them, they took in almost 30,000 animals a year. And then Rick Ducharme and First Coast No More Homeless Pets started a program in conjunction with the municipal shelter called Feral Freedom. And basically, it's a very radical experiment in which all cats that come into the shelter in traps are immediately turned over to First Coast No More Homeless Pets for TNR. And then the No More Homeless Pets brings the animals back to their trapping site, puts signs on the door that says, this is what we do now. And so it's actually, TNR is now city policy, rather than being the exception and being a very complicated process where you have to get permission and identify caregivers. The animals are just neutered, vaccinated, and put back out. The theory underlying that is that these cats are thriving where they are. They have a home in the community, and we're starting to call them community cats now rather than feral cats. And if they're doing well, clearly they're identifying the resources that they need, whether we know of a caregiver or not. And overnight, over a few months, their live release rate went up to about 70%. Because what happened was, first it was just the feral cats, and then the staff started noticing that all the feral cats were getting out alive, but the friendly cats really weren't. So the staff at the shelter started putting their favorite cats out in traps on the loading dock. And what an irony is that, is that a feral cat gets saved, but when we were there, we said, God help you if you purr, because the outcome for cats that purred really wasn't very good at the shelter before this program. And so now it's all stray and feral cats.